Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, the sports tech venture capital company. On this show, I interview top sports entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives who are shaping and many times changing the sports business industry. You can subscribe to our show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our 76 Capital website. Today, my guest on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show is the legendary University of Maryland sports broadcaster, Johnny Holliday. Now in his 45th year as Maryland's play-by-play voice, Holliday has broadcasted more than 1,600 Maryland Terps football and basketball games, including 16 bowl games, 12 Sweet 16s, 2 Final Fours, and Maryland's basketball national championship win over Indiana in 2002. He's an incredible man, incredible family man, and I'm sure he'll find a way to talk about how proud he is of his kids and grandchildren. Johnny, welcome to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to be with you. Yes, I will talk about my grandkids and my girls and my family. Yes.
Well, that's what it's all about. And, you know, what's amazing is when I think about Maryland, I think about family. So many family members of mine that have gone to Maryland. Now my son is there at Maryland, and he's truly the one, Hunter's the one who reconnected us. He's a junior there now. And at the Barclays Center before the Maryland-Syracuse game, he reintroduced me to you. And because he's working for Maryland Sports Properties and helping produce some of your shows. And it was awesome to see you and recall some of my own WMUC days when I was at Maryland broadcasting games with Mark Quint back in the late 80s. So it's awesome to have you on the show, and I can't wait to talk to you about all the exciting things that have happened over the years and what you really see as the future for Maryland sports.
Well, I had no idea you worked at WMUC. Wow. How about that? What'd you do? Football games, basketball games?
I did both for my 4 years.
Wow. And I bet you learned a lot too, didn't you?
I did. So I learned so much and met so many great people like you, Tony Kornheiser, Mike Wilbaum, all the guys. I mean, back then we're just, those guys were just guys. And
2 out of 3 is not bad.
So certainly we had some great stories over the years. And, I always loved having the Maryland crab soup at halftime of the football games. That was my best meal of the week.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Well, when you think about, the being the voice of Maryland for now over 45 years, when you kind of look back and think about all the things that have happened, are there certain, couple moments that just stand out in your mind?
Well, this is year 46. I started in 1979. And I think, without question, the national championship would have to be at the very top of all the things that I've been able to do for the school. To win that in basketball is, you can't duplicate something like that. I think every broadcaster for every school dreams about winning a bowl game or winning a national championship in whatever sport they're broadcasting. That was a magical year for Gary Williams with the guys that he had. Not one single high school All-American on that national championship team, but just a bunch of guys that reflected Gary's personality, which was with a chip on the shoulder and the attitude of nobody is as good as we are. We're going to kick everybody's rear end every time we go on that floor. And I think that's what it takes even today to be a national championship. You got to have the right mix of guys that believe in their coach and reflect his personality. And that's exactly what happened back in 2002. That would be the number one highlight of all the years I've done at Maryland. I think anytime you go to a bowl game, and I've done a lot of bowl games, a lot of wins, a lot of tough losses. Those are also highlights that you put in the back pocket and say, hey, boy, when I start listing things of accomplishments, this will be in there. I think the comeback win over Miami in 1984 in the Orange Bowl. I'm going back to my hometown where I grew up in Miami. I played in the Orange Bowl in high school, and that is a magnificent, magnificent venue, a legendary site. University of Miami, the Dolphins played there for many, many years. We're down 31-0 to Miami at halftime. We come back, we win that game. At that time, the greatest come from behind win in Division I college football, down by 31. I remember having the chancellor on at halftime, and we're down 31-0. And I said, "What do you look for in the second half?" And he said, "Johnny, I think we're going to come back and win this game." And I said, "Okay." You do see the scoreboard. It's 31-0. What are they serving to the media here at halftime that you maybe have consumed a couple to give me that comment? And they go out and they knock off, Miami in the second half. Frank Reich comes in replacing Stan Gelbaugh. They had some great plays, and that will be a memory I will never forget. On the way back to College Park from Miami, you would think the guys in the plane would be celebrating. It would be raucous and be going through the roof. You could hear a pin drop. Everybody was so exhausted from that game, nobody felt like celebrating. Then I find out later on that Bobby Ross had told these guys at halftime, if we don't win this game, if we don't put some effort out in the second half, when we get back to Baltimore, take the buses back to College Park, you guys are going to run the steps, okay? It could be midnight, and you're going to run the steps at Bird Stadium. That's a game I'll never forget. The come from behind win to beat NC State for the ACC championship in 2003, I believe it was, when Ralph Friedgen was coaching. What he did to turn the program around. So I think of the memories I have, it'd be coaches like Jerry Claiborne, who I started with, Lefty I started with in basketball. Certainly Gary Williams, Hall of Fame coach. Mark Turgeon was tremendous. I look at Bobby Ross and Joe Krivak and Ralph Friedgen, now Mike Loxley, the coaches we have now. The relationship, you can't put a price tag on a relationship with the players and with the coaches. And the thing that kind of impresses me the most and means the most to me is when players that you call their games stay in touch with you. Oh, they'll come at halftime of a football game, give me a big bear hug from behind. I have no idea who it is because they haven't got a jersey on. They don't have a number on. And I'll never forget, this guy comes in, and right in the middle of a play, I get this big bear hug from behind. And I turn around, and this guy gives me a thumbs up. I don't know who it is. No idea. So he's waiting for halftime. So we take a break, and I said, what brings you up here? He said, "I'm your halftime guest." Oh, but I'm trying to figure out who the heck is this guy? DeQuell Jackson.
Wow.
And I said, "I don't recognize you out of your uniform." And I've had that happen so many times where guys, he said, "Well, you did my games 30 years ago." Oh, really? But that's great that they do stay in touch with you and, keep the line open in case you want to talk to them.
Well, you mentioned broadcasting bowl games, and certainly I remember back when you were doing it on the real radio station and I was doing it on WMUC, broadcasting the Independence Bowl.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And,
In
which was a
Shreveport?
tie.
That was Shreveport, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was a tie game. I think it was 35-35, if I remember correctly. And that was when it was Scott Zolak's senior year at Maryland, and when he was playing quarterback, when he was always the backup for Neil O'Donnell. And you think about all the Maryland quarterbacks that have come through the system. It's really incredible. And having Boomer now, as a broadcaster as well, and see how well he's doing, and the incredible story about him and his son. Just amazing people that you've had an opportunity to work with over the years.
Now, did you guys do the bowl game? Did you broadcast it down in Shreveport?
We did.
Okay. Where were you broadcasting from? Do you remember?
So we were up. we were up pretty high.
Well, when we got in the press box, I said to the guy, where's the Maryland radio? He said, you see the ladder down there? You take the ladder up to the next, excuse me? So we take this ladder from the press box to the next level. And the next level has no window in front of it. It began to rain. The wind was blowing. All of our papers were going on the 20-yard line. Some were on the 30-yard line. They're blowing all over the place. It's the worst broadcast position I've ever been in a football game. On this auxiliary small little press box they put on top of the press box. And it was terrible. It was just, so you guys must have been up the same place we were.
Yeah, we were up high and we were out in the weather. I remember that. And
yeah, that was the worst. Oh, right
well,
now, when we go to Minneapolis and we play Minnesota, they put us up in the corner of the arena where you're looking down the floor at an angle and you are so high you cannot read the numbers of the guys if they're shooting at the basket at the far end. You have no idea who's got the ball. So we just kind of like, it's radio. So we kind of like make it up as we go along. We think such and such is just taking the shot. And so I'm looking, I said to the media relations person, why would you put us up here? Well, we've always put you up here. I said, now where's your broadcast crew? Oh, they're down there on the floor. I said, okay. So I said to myself, I didn't tell them, I said to myself, when they come to College Park, I will make sure they are not on the floor. They'll be up in this corner of the arena. Payback time for them. Like Gary Williams used to say to me, I'd say, hey, coach, can you do a pregame interview with the guy from North Carolina State? And Gary would say to me, is their coach doing an interview with you? And I'd say, well, no, he doesn't do that. Then I don't either. I won't. If they don't talk to you, I will not talk to them. That's pretty good loyalty right there for the old Hall of Fame coach.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, you were with you, as you said, this is your 46th year at Maryland. Maryland was originally in the ACC, now the Big Ten. You know, I think in the end, when you sort of step back and say, what a brilliant business move, you know, to do that when they did. But at the same time, there must be so many incredible memories that you have, you know, going down to Duke and UNC, and you mentioned NC State, and must have been incredible.
You know what I miss the most? I miss the coaches in the ACC. I miss the hotels. I miss the arenas. I miss the visiting broadcasters. And I was not a big fan of the move to the Big Ten, like a lot of other people weren't either. Now, of course, I am because of the exposure that Maryland has, the competition they're in. The best and toughest conference in the country, I think, is the Big Ten, football and basketball. But you get so used to 35 years in one conference, and you know the hotels, you know the restaurants, you know the airports, everything. And we were the only broadcast crew, myself and Greg Manning, when we played Duke. Mike Krzyzewski never talked to any of the broadcasters except Greg and I. And we go to Coach K's office and we would sit there with him talking about everything. And I would finally have to say to Coach K, hey, Coach, we have to go on the air here in about 20 minutes. Can we tape the? Oh, yeah, sure. And the conversations we had were tremendous. I know there's a lot of people uncomfortable with the Duke situation, that when Maryland played Duke, it was such a major, major battle and rivalry. And a lot of people didn't like Coach K. But I was one of the big supporters of him. When I had a grandson who's now 26 years old, Jack Raleigh, was diagnosed with a brain tumor at age 11. And so Bob Harris, the late Bob Harris, who did the Duke games, said to me, I'm going to have every broadcaster in the ACC contact their coach and have them send your grandson something to lift his spirits, something from their team, a helmet, a football, a basketball. The first box he gets is postmarked Durham, North Carolina. In the box is a Duke sweatshirt, a Duke basketball signed by Coach K and all the players, and a letter from Mike Krzyzewski. Hey, Jack, this is from your friends at Duke. We know you will probably never wear this Duke sweatshirt because of your grandfather being the host of the Maryland broadcast. But we just want to let you know that all the guys on our team and our school are praying for you. We wish you well. We know you're going to beat that brain tumor. And if you ever want to use this sweatshirt to go out and work in the yard or something like that, feel free to do so. I will never forget what Coach K did. And he puts down his cell phone. Anytime Jack wants to call me, here's my number. And that's the relationship I had with him.
Absolutely. That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
How about your interactions over the years, before he passed with Jimmy V, and Jim Valvano at NC State?
Jim was, he was such a colorful coach and character. And it was the same thing with him. Greg and I would sit down with him and just be mesmerized by his stories before I taped an interview. Probably the most accessible coach in the ACC, maybe in the country, was Jim Valvano. At the Olympics in Los Angeles, I was there for ABC Sports, which I spent 28 years with them. And he was our expert analyst in basketball. So the day would be over. We'd go back to the hotel, sit around the pool at night, listening to Jim Valvano's stories. And then we would talk about the upcoming season. We would end the Olympics. He'd say, hey, I'll see you in such and such a date when NC State comes to Maryland. So one of the times he comes to Maryland, we do the pregame interview. And I said, what concerns you most about this game tonight with the Terrapins? And so Jim looks at me and he says, I'll tell you what concerns me most. I have a lot of assistants. I have 7 assistants. I'm concerned I won't have a place to sit on the bench. That concerns me most about this game tonight. Where is the head coach going to sit on the bench? So before the game, just before the team has come out, here come the coaches. So Valvano is stopping to talk to Gary and shake his hand. And as he walks past me, he says, watch, I may not have a place to sit. He goes down and the game is about to start just before the tip. And Valvano comes back to me, taps on the table and says, I told you I have nowhere to sit down here. This is before the game starts. And I think that's why his players were so good, so relaxed, because he was. I mean, he was in the game once it started, but he was absolutely a delight to be with.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what
and
was,
look what Dick Vitale has done, raising money for the V Foundation, millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And I every year when I watch that Jimmy V special they have on ESPN and watch him with his talk and telling the teleprompter person, you're telling me to wrap it up, and I don't know how much time I have to live, and you're telling me to wrap it up. Hey, Goomba. That was a classic. Still is a classic.
Absolutely. I mean, look, all the characters over the years. I mean, you mentioned Lefty Drizel, was the coach at Maryland, right? And then you had around the same time at UNC, Dean Smith.
Oh yeah,
I mean, the greats that you've had an opportunity to work with.
Dean Smith. I'd have Greg Manning do the interview with Dean Smith, and Dean, every time he did the interview, would somehow, some way, be able to work in Well, Greg, if I'd have had you here at North Carolina, we wouldn't have lost those 4 days last year. I recruited you, and you'd every single time we did an interview, he would always bring up to Greg how he tried to recruit him to come to North Carolina. He was a classic. And, at Clemson, we go to Clemson, and Rick Barnes was the head coach down there, and he'd been up here at George Mason. And he is still, to this very day, now the head coach of Tennessee, one of the most personable guys that I've ever talked to. And we played Tennessee last year at the Garden up in New York. And I hadn't seen Rick Barnes in years and years, since the days at Clemson. And so I go through his SID to ask if I can do an interview with the coach. And the response, well, he's very busy, but I'll ask him. The next thing I know, the phone rings and it's Rick Barnes. He said, I understand you want to talk to me. Hey, here's my cell phone. Don't go through my media relations guy. Just call me up. Of course you can talk to me. And the same thing, all we did was talk about the days in the ACC and how the conferences have now gone this way and that way. And it doesn't make sense to have West Virginia in the Big 12 and, Syracuse. It's a great coach, great coach. I met so many of them. I mean, Lefty was overpowering, intimidating until you got to know him. And then he was like a giant teddy bear. And I love the guy. He was great to work with.
So in all these amazing cities that you've had an opportunity to go to on multiple times, who takes the best care of you and the University of Maryland?
Today or back in the ACC days?
Well, we'll do both.
Yeah. I would say, gosh, in the ACC, probably NC State, Carolina, Duke, Florida State. Florida State has the best food.
Oh,
we would
what do
play
they serve?
Florida.
What do they serve?
They have a chef. We would play Florida State in a noon or 1 o'clock game on a Sunday, and they got a chef carving up the roast beef. They've got the salads. They've got the vegetables. They've got the tray set up over here with all the desserts. Other schools might have a gift certificate for a hot dog and a Coke that they give you. But these guys really, Florida State was the best. Carolina's food was tremendous. So was Duke, and they had people dishing it out. But it's changed a lot now. A lot of schools now today have nothing for the media. They have all they have is drinks, water or a Coke or a Sprite or Mountain Dew or something like that. They don't serve food anymore. It's become a numbers game. I think right now, Ohio State, I love to go there. Paul Keels, the broadcaster, one of the best in the business. Probably my closest friend in the Big Ten among the broadcasters is Steve Jones up at Penn State. And we will talk on he has a talk show. And I'll go on a show every single year. And I always tell him, I know why I'm here, to help raise the ratings because you have no audience. And I'm here to help you get. And we probably talk an hour before we play the game on the phone. And my wife has said to me, I'm glad you guys don't live together because you'd be spending a lot of time together. We have the same kind of a humor line that we share. We can compare notes about our program and his program. Steve Jones is the best of the best, the Penn State guy. Don Fisher at Indiana, the longest running play-by-play guy in the Big Ten. This is his 52nd year doing Indiana football and basketball. So in the Big Ten, I'm like third or fourth as far as tenure is concerned. The Michigan State guy's been there like 47 years, 48 years. Wow. Guys get jobs with one school. They stay there. Nobody moves on. It's a great job, but Indiana's great to go to. Ohio State's great to go to. The people at Nebraska are tremendous. When you go in the Midwest, out west, Nebraska, you'll go to Iowa. It's a whole different culture out there. When they play the anthem, everybody stands at attention. Everybody sings along with the anthem. It's played the way it's written. There's no individual interpretation of the anthem. And it's a whole different feeling when you go to places like Nebraska and Iowa and Michigan State and Michigan. Whole different ballgame out there. So I get all kind of cultures when I travel. And I compare notes. I'm thinking, gosh, when we go back to Maryland, we ought to try this. We ought to do this at halftime. We ought to do this before the game starts. Everybody's got different ways of doing things. So you get a sample of a lot of different directions.
So Maryland has the tradition with basketball and football games of the flag now coming down. What are some of the other traditions that you see at other stadiums and arenas that have been really that have been pretty amazing to see?
Well, I think it depends upon where they put the band. The band at Michigan State is incredible. The band at Illinois is even better than Michigan State and Michigan. And Purdue is another place that when you get to Purdue, they get the kids lined up outside to get into the arena. But you got to remember, these are all places we go to where there's no other diversions. It's the school that's the most important thing. At Illinois and Champaign, you've got no Ravens, you got no Commanders, you got no Nationals, you not got no Orioles. All you've got is Purdue. And that's why these schools are so successful, because the student body and the fan base and the community rallies all around the schools. And here in College Park in Maryland, you've got so many other distractions. And that's why it's tough to equal the fan base, the enthusiasm that these other schools have, because they have no competition. We have so much competition. But still, as you can imagine, because of the game that we played, and we knocked off a very good Wisconsin team, number 17 in the country, with 17,950 fans on hand, making it sound like there was 25,000. And that's what the school needs for every game, to have fans like that show up. When you're winning, they will come, and they're starting to come right now at Maryland.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin Willard and the team are really starting to play well on the basketball side of things. And so when you think about, and you talked about, the fans and the excitement at Xfinity, how does that compare to Cole Fieldhouse and when that place was rocking with 14,500 people?
Yeah. And the heat was turned up. There was no air conditioning. And the other team is perspiring feverishly. That was a home court advantage right there. I mean, the Xfinity Center is more like a pro arena. It's so big and so spacious. And they had to have a new arena. But boy, Cole Fieldhouse, you talk about a home court advantage. And Greg Manning and I used to talk all the time about why teams struggled when they came to Cole Fieldhouse. It was hot, 14-5 on top of you, which made it sound like there were 20,000 people in that place, especially when Carolina came in and Duke came in. It was just a major, major home court advantage. And that's why I think people were so reluctant for the move to the Big Ten, and even more reluctant when they tore Cole Fieldhouse apart and make it into the Jones Hill Fieldhouse now. But it was a major, major home court advantage. I loved it. Coaches loved it. Players loved it, from Maryland, not from the opposition. But it was a major, major factor in the success of the basketball program.
So when you look at a Maryland alum like Scott Van Pelt, and you see the success that he's had at ESPN and how he's still so much loved when he shows up at Maryland or makes a video for Maryland, that must be really special for you, and he really certainly plays a big role in all of Maryland athletics.
Well, not only for Scott, but look at Bonnie Bernstein. Bonnie Bernstein went to Maryland, a tremendous reporter for CBS, did a lot of things. Boomer Esiason.
Bonnie and I used to work together.
Oh, did you really?
We were the same years. So Bonnie's a friend. Absolutely.
Bonnie was tremendous. We had a Johnny Holliday show a couple of years ago at Maryland where I would interview all these former athletes for an hour, and she came on with me, and she was tremendous. Boomer, is a major flag bearer for Maryland, and does that morning show up in New York City on the radio, always talking about Maryland. Tim Brandt is another Maryland grad who went into the media on Channel 7. Kevin Plank, the creator. I mean, there's so many different people that have made their mark because they went to Maryland, and they still have a chance to let people know, yeah, they're still flying the flag for the university. And that helps the school tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely does. And you have now the head of ESPN Bet at ESPN is Mike Morrison. He's a Maryland alum as well. Was there the same time SVP was there, and it's really amazing to see Maryland everywhere. When we've talked, recently we were talking, Johnny, about the change of collegiate sports.
Yeah.
And how things have gone from, really being a 4-year amazing collegiate, student athlete experience to the world that we're in now with NIL and the transfer portal. How's that affected the game from your vantage point?
Well, I think as a player, it's been good. The players, I think, deserve to be paid something, and it's long overdue because they were bringing in a lot of money for the university because of their athletic talents. For the coaches, I think it's tough. Coaches want to coach. Coaches want to make the players better if they're going to go to the next level. And most of them are not. You may get 2 or 3 here or there along the way from your program over a couple of years who may end up in the NBA or the NFL. But most of the guys are going to be working like you and I are working now and not playing football or basketball or baseball anymore. So the coaches, they don't know who's going to be here next year. Right now, there could be schools contacting everybody on the Maryland basketball team, or boosters, or people that are working the NIL circuit for a respective school could be in touch with all these guys saying, hey, you come play for us next year, we're going to give you bang, which is bang more than you're getting at the University of Maryland. So it depends upon who's got the most money that gets the most recognizable names in a particular sport to come play for that school. And I think that's wrong. Coaches are hired to coach the kids, not to be fundraisers. And Kevin Willard and I have talked about this an awful lot, that a lot of the time that he has to spend is creating relationships with donors and having them contribute to the Maryland basketball program, or Mike Loxley for the football program. And luckily, we've had a couple of big donors. Recently, $10 million donated by an anonymous source that I do know who it is, but I'm not going to mention my name. An anonymous source, giving $10 million to the basketball program. That would help tremendously. But I think the NCAA's got to sit back. And I asked Coach one time, don't you guys have a coalition of coaches that can go to the NCAA and say, hey, guys, this is not working. We've got to adjust this some way before it gets completely out of control. And the coaches have no say. But I hope the NCAA steps back and looks at the overall picture and comes up with some kind of a plan that will ensure that if a player is going to sign a deal to play for a school, he's got to give them maybe a couple of years, and maybe there'll be a contract that he has to sign. And the contract says, we will pay you X amount of money for your time at this particular school, and we expect you to do this for that kind of money. If you don't do this, then we will reduce what we're paying you from this number down to this number. I mean, that's a hypothetical situation, but I think right now it's totally out of control. And you're losing good coaches. You lose the coach at Virginia. You lose, Jay Wright at Villanova. You lose Mike Krzyzewski. You lose Roy Williams. You lose all the Jim Larinaga. They're all walking away because they didn't sign up for what's going on right now. And then if you're a coach, you got to keep up with the Joneses or else you get left in the dust. You have to adjust to whatever's going on.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation as we wrap up here on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. It's so great to have Johnny Holliday on our show, and really sharing all these great stories and memories and thoughts on collegiate sports and just sports in general. And when you kind of think about if someone wanted to get into the game today and be a broadcaster, you talk to, young aspiring sportscasters, what's some of a couple of things that you advise them on as to what to do?
I would probably say have the confidence that you can basically do anything. That's what I did when I first started out, that I knew I could be a good disc jockey, and I was for a lot of years, but I knew I could do more than just play the records and give away $5,000 every 2 hours and give away cars and you're buying an audience. I knew I could do commercials. I knew I could do announcing. I knew I could do theater. I knew I could MC events. I could do television. I could do anything. And I think for young guys starting off today, if you don't have that confidence level, then you're never going to make it. And it's not a cocky thing. It's just a confidence that you can do anything. I had a boss in New York tell me one time named Joel Chaseman, who passed away a couple of years ago. He was the head of Post Newsweek broadcasting. He was the head of 1010 Wins in New York. He's the guy that hired Glenn Brenner to come to Washington, probably the best sportscaster that DC's ever had. And he told me once in New York, he said, "What do you think of when you're on the air between 2 and 6 on 1010 Wins? What is your mindset?" I had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, "Mr. Chaseman, my mindset is, I guess, I don't know." He said, "I want you to think when you're on the air that nobody else in New York City exists except Johnny Holliday, and that everybody in New York and Connecticut and New Jersey is listening to you on 1010 Wins. You are better than anybody." And I never forgot that. So I think any young broadcaster should go into it saying, "Hey, I can do this. I can do that." That's what I did. And then when the door opens up, you've got to take advantage of it right there. Try to be as versatile as you can be. Try to do a lot of different things. And instead of having one income, you'll have something from here, something from there, something from there, and you'll enjoy it a lot more. And I think that's one of the things for me now in 60 some odd years on the air has been the biggest factor for me, that I've enjoyed doing everything and still do. And the longer you do it, the better you're going to get. That in a nutshell is what I would suggest to young broadcasters.
Incredible advice from the legendary University of Maryland sports broadcaster, Johnny Holliday. Johnny, again, thank you so much for joining us.
And give your son my best.
I absolutely will.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
On behalf of the entire 76 Capital team, thank you for joining us for this edition of our Sports Leadership Show. Please remember to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast network or on the 76 Capital website. You can also explore the hundreds of episodes we've produced over the past several years on those same networks. And as always, go out there and make it happen.